All right, so we are at 12:05. Welcome to all of those who have joined our safety webinar entitled "How to Best Address Pallet Rack Damage in Your Warehouse." I am Mark Russo. I head up national accounts for the company. I'm on camera just for a few seconds, just so you can see my live face, so you don't think it's somebody else presenting today. We have a lot of great material. Hopefully, many of you have attended our past webinars. Some of the information we'll be covering today, you may have heard in previous webinars, but I think it's more of a refresher in those cases more than anything else. So with that, I'll get ourselves going with the agenda. We'll be covering 5 major topics today. So the first being, why rack safety? Again, I think it's important to put the context. Why is rack safety important? Secondly, we'll do kind of a compare and contrast between rack repair and replacement. We'll talk about some of the myths, some of the misinformation that might be out there regarding rack repair. We'll talk to you about column repair or how it works, the basics behind it, so you can understand the technology and the process. We'll talk about how to repair a brace as well. And there's some time in the back end for Q&A, depending on how much time we have. We have an hour allocated for the webinar. I'm mindful of your busy schedules, so we'll certainly do our best to end on time. There is a Q&A button towards the bottom, so feel free to ask some questions and we'll address those on the back end. If we don't have enough time, we'll provide answers thereafter. So I will now go off camera and continue with the presentation. So why rack safety? We alluded to it before. We've got several people on the webinar today. Took time out of the busy schedules, maybe skipping lunch if you're on the East Coast to attend this. So why is this important? And this is what I like to put in terms of context. First and foremost, and we've covered this a few times, rack systems are highly efficient structures, primarily designed to hold vertical load, right? So they're designed through the thinnest material possible to ensure the cheapest solution in many cases to hold the vertical loads that you place on them. Said otherwise, they're just not designed for impact, right? So very few uprights, some structural that may have some additional protection or double posted will, I think, have a secondary thought to horizontal impact, but for the most part, their primary purpose in life is to hold vertical loads. Now, warehouses, as we all know, are living entities. We're always changing beams around. We're moving stuff around. We're in constant flux and change, and we're in dynamic environments. I mean, we all know what it's like to work in a freezer. You're shooting in and out of these things, trying to pick at a certain pace because your workers are paid to pick quickly. So that creates a very dynamic environment that could lead for some potentially unsafe situations. And those unsafe situations are usually resulting from damage that can occur at any time. And if the damage is left unaddressed, it could weaken the structure, this efficient structure that I just talked about. It could weaken it to a point where you're now creating an unsafe environment for your workers, which could lead to something fairly catastrophic. Now, what am I talking about when I'm looking at issues? Well, here are some examples. Now, these are examples that our engineers that we have on staff that travel throughout North America performing inspections on behalf of yourselves or other customers. And this is the kind of stuff that we see. So from just someone running straight into the upright from the side or from the front, or placing a pallet the wrong way, trying to perform a repair locally by using the welder down the street, to just trying to perform their own in-house repair with 2x4s or, if you can believe it, plastic wrap. And these are pictures that we've shown in past webinars, but I think it's important to kind of convey the kind of things people are trying to do or that they don't do when they're faced with rack damage. Now, if these things are left unaddressed, well, this is the tragic consequence that happens. Now, many of you, again, may have seen this before. The idea being, if we let those positions that have been either impacted severely or that have really botched up kind of repairs, all it takes is another hit, another ding on the upright or on the brace to cause something traumatic and catastrophic to happen. So it's not always, that big violent damage that I just showed you, but it's also repetitive impact over time that will lead to the weakening of the structure. And there's just no telling when the last impact is going to cause that structure to collapse. So rack repair versus replacement. The idea behind this is we're going to present you with a couple options to address the damage in your warehouse. Now, for those of you that have been really good about attending our past webinars, if you recall, we had 5 basic steps to ensure rack safety in your warehouse. The first one was to inspect, where we're accumulating data. We have professionals that are analyzing the damage on our structure and presenting us with information to address the issues that are in our warehouse. The second one is to take action, right? So this is where we now ensure that we put plans in place to address the high priority or critical damage that we outlined in our first step. Now, the third one is protect, right? So protect is, I have all this wonderful data, all this wonderful information from my inspection. I'm now going to be proactive about ensuring that I protect areas that I know to be prone to potential damage. I then go into a training cycle, which just means that I'm now ensuring that those people that are putting eyes on the uprights for their own self-inspection. So some companies don't only rely on a third party like Damotech to come in and perform the inspections on it. They'll have their own workers perform self-inspections. So the training aspect is important. And finally, you kind of closing this whole cycle off by tracking and reporting. So this is ensuring that you have a mechanism in place to address the issues, ensure that you're following the process and that the reporting portion of this is being taken care of. So those are the 5 basic elements of how to get to a safe warehouse. Today, we're going to focus on take action, which is number 2. We've inspected, we found a bunch of damage. Now we're going to look for ways to address those issues. Now, the first option available to us all, which we're all familiar with, is the rack replacement option. Very simply put, you damage an upright, you either take a spare upright that you have in stock, right? So the same thing, same gauge, same profile, same height, same dimensions, everything's got to be the exact same. You have one, you slip it in, and you get back to business. Now, we're going to cover in a couple slides some of the more challenging elements of swapping out an upright, but that's if you have one in stock. And if you don't have one in stock, and we'll cover this in a couple slides, there's a considerable amount of time that goes into getting that component back. And for those of you in the industry that have been around for some time, the last 18 months have been absolutely horrendous. Cycle times on material is crazy. It's 2 to 3 times what we're used to seeing from a component replacement. So this is just to say that if you have issues in your facility, absolutely looking at this from an independent view, swapping out the component is absolutely appropriate. Now, what we're going to do now is present an alternative. And why is that alternative important? Is because the problem that you all are going to face as you're swapping out that component is it's just a matter of time before that damaged component that you just replaced gets impacted once again. And then you're going to make your way through this wonderful vicious circle that we call, where you're going to replace the component once again. You're going to do the right thing, and put a plan in place. But unfortunately, because sometimes these positions are in areas where they're just prone to impact, it'll get damaged and replaced again. All I'm trying to drive to is the fact that there's a cost and time element to the cycle that we have in front of us. So and we've all been through it, whether it's a beam that gets damaged or an upright that gets damaged. The right thing to do is to replace it, great. But how do we get ourselves out of this potential loop? And the alternative, quite honestly, is just rack repair, right? So we're going to cover a lot of things about rack repair to make folks educated, more knowledgeable about this option to address some of the issues in your warehouse. And what you have before you is an example of a rack repair solution. So on the left, we have the damaged upright. In the middle picture, we have a repair solution provided by Damotech in this instance. And to the right, we have another solution, which is an adjustable brace repair. So this is kind of just to introduce what we have. Now, what is rack repair? So we have on the right a standard rack repair solution. And what rack repair is fundamentally, at least from our point of view, it's an engineered solution. Why is that the first thing I'm talking about? It's because without the engineering aspect behind it, we're no better off than someone just doing a botched welding job in the field. So you have to ensure that the solution that you pick for rack repair is an engineered solution that can be backed up accordingly. Second point, because it's an engineered solution, it has to restore the original load capacity of the rack. And no point in doing a repair if you now have to take a haircut on the load capacity of your upright. So second point. Third point, it's got to maintain the original rack configuration. So the bracing pattern has to flow the same way that it was originally designed for in the upright. So your repair solution should have a bracing pattern that flows the same way. Now, some of the advantages of rack repair is that it's custom built. Custom built means that for most cases, it'll fit any style of industrial pallet racking. So I think we've all been through situations where we've acquired a facility because we're in an expansion. The facility is 20 years old. Well, lo and behold, the uprights that are sold by the OEM at the time no longer exist. So good luck trying to get a spare part, a replacement part for an upright that no longer exists. So you have a couple different options available to use as well. I swap out all the uprights in one section to ensure they're consistent. I re-rack everywhere, or I look for an alternative like rack repair. So another great example where rack repair makes a ton of sense. Now, I talked about welding before. No infield welding with rack repair, at least the solution that we provide. It's a bolted solution, as you can see on the screen. Whatever welding that does take place is at the factory. So whatever you get in the field is already ready to go, ready to be bolted and screwed in. And another great advantage of rack repair is that you can repair the front damaged column or the front and back. So if your damage extends through the entire upright where you whacked the front column, it bent the brace, and then now it also kinked the back column. Well, with rack repair, you could do that and fix both of those instances. So let's go over some of the myths that we have about rack repair. So I kind of gave you a very, very 10,000 foot level appreciation for what rack repair is as its very base form. So the first myth, and these are things that we just hear all the time. So we have, I think, 5 that we're going to cover today. Rack repair is more expensive than rack replacement. Well, so, and we have slides beyond slides later in the deck to cover this, but often rack repair is a fraction of the cost of rack replacement. When you look at all the different variables that come into play, from the time it takes to disassemble something, the time it takes to reassemble something, all those things have a cost element to them. If you don't have any downtime as a result of having to disassemble stuff, well, now you're actually saving stuff. In the case of brace repair, and we're going to talk about that in a couple slides, and I showed you a picture before, if you don't have to replace an entire upright because you've got a brace or 2 that are damaged, you don't have to pay a maintenance crew to come in and take everything apart. You can do this yourself. Myth number 2, rack manufacturers don't approve of rack repair. Well, that's not the case. The RMI, so Rack Manufacturers Institute, is the governing body that looks after all racking OEMs. they approve and they endorse an engineered rack repair solution. Now, they have guidelines behind it, right? They have guidelines on what rack repair should and should not be. But we have to get away from this idea that rack repair is what it used to be 30 years ago. So Damotech's been doing this now since the late 80s. So we have evolved considerably with the industry to ensure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed when it comes time for rack repair. Now, another provision, which I spoke to before, is that we have to ensure that the repair restores the original design and load capacity of the upright that we're addressing. And of course, RMI always recommends that if you're interested in rack repair, you're consulting about it, or you have damage in your facility, go seek the expertise of a rack safety expert for that repair, and they'll guide you in the right way. Myth number 3: a single damaged brace will not impact the rack's structural integrity. A single brace can. Not saying it will in all instances, but a damaged brace, if you've got a 1/2-inch deformation on your brace, and we have a little snippet there with the orange arrow pointing at the damaged brace, that damaged brace in certain environments, seismic especially, can absolutely reduce the structural integrity of your upright. So whether you're missing a brace or you have a damaged one, now the amount of degradation we can't say unless we take it apart and put it in the press and see at what point it fails. But certainly the idea that a damaged brace is innocuous, it doesn't matter, I think we have to get away from that. Several small dents on a brace, or a brace where the welds have popped, where they're no longer in contact with the upright, can absolutely lead to some structural integrity failures. So again, if you have any questions about it, bring an expert in to assess whether the context that you're operating in, needs to be addressed if you have a damaged brace. The experts are going to tell you, and I think we all concur, if you've got a damaged brace on your first level, so your first horizontal brace is damaged beyond what we think is acceptable, that's a whole lot different than a damaged brace, at the very top level of your upright. And an expert will be able to tell you the difference between the two and whether the topmost damaged brace needs to be addressed or not. So context is everything, but this myth has to be quelled, and to ensure that a damaged brace can indeed be serious. Our fourth myth: rack repair kits are not as robust and therefore not as safe as OEM parts. Rack repair kits, by their very nature, unlike an upright, are designed for both vertical loads and horizontal loads. So the gauge of steel that we're going to utilize, which we'll cover in a couple slides, the design behind them, the bullnose, the anchors, all those things make their way into the design and the fact that these are much more robust engineered structures than your typical upright. And of course, if you're like a Damotech, you will ensure that you provide the warranty sufficient to ensure that that statement is true. And in our case, in some cases for other OEMs as well, are providing a lifetime warranty against impact. So here's a brief video. It's a bit dated, but I think it says a lot. So to play it real quick. So very bad operator, our director of operations running into the upright, not knowing what he's doing. So this is, again, a bit dated. You get an idea for what the process is like. This is all real time, of course. So repair kit is installed, same poor driver. We didn't fire him when we should. So as you can see, a tremendous difference between the impact on an upright versus the impact on a repair solution like Damotech's. Fifth and final myth: rack repair kits lower the overall rack load capacity. De facto, by the RMI standards, an engineered rack repair solution must restore the original load capacity of the upright that we're fixing. It's designed to restore and to respect the original configuration of the rack. And of course, if you have other questions, feel free to visit our website. But what we're trying to drive home here in these myths. Now, I think we might be going a little overboard with trying to promote some of the points here, but they're very salient in that many folks still believe that certain rack repair solutions or all rack repair solutions don't meet what's considered safe or okay by RMI, and it's not the case. I'm hoping some of this is going to help educate the masses out there as to what rack repair really is about. Now, how column repair works. And before I get into anything, for those that are wondering why, another example of why doing rack repair, 85% of rack damage happens in the bottom 24 inches. So if you've got a 30-foot tall upright and you damage the bottom 12 because the outrigger on your forklift impacted the column, wouldn't it be smart just to address that bottom 12 or 24 inches rather than having to address the whole piece of steel? So rack repair has the advantage of isolating the damage component that we're talking about, rather than having to replace the entire upright. So here's a quick video to show you what that process looked like. So here we go. I damaged the bottom of the upright with the outrigger. I come in with a crew, took my measurements. I'm now going to remove the damaged portion, all done by certified installers, bolt it into place, anchor it into place, and voila, I now have a solution that's guaranteed for life against impact. So for those that have a more technical penchant for stuff, we're going to go through a couple kind of nifty things about rack repair, at least the solution that we offer. First and foremost, right out of the gate, it's a permanent solution. So we are looking to permanently repair and protect the damaged column that was damaged, right? So how do we do that? Well, it goes by ensuring you have the right design and the right materials to address it. So in the case of our solution, it's a 1/4 inch structural steel for the front post because we have a front damage. We use screw type anchors that are high shearing. We happen to like Hilti. That's our preference, rather than using a wedge anchor, which we find is not necessarily as resistant or easy to install as a screw anchor. And of course, we have a bullnose, which is used to do two things: one, to deflect a potential impact, and two, to protect the anchor that's there, that's really providing all of that horizontal resistance to impact, and of course, any resistance to uplift. We'll use grade 5 bolts for bolting in our kit to the upright, and we're going to ensure that we maintain the original configuration of the upright by putting a horizontal and diagonal brace that flows with the pattern of the original upright and is used to disperse impact energy from the front. So that's why if you look towards the back of our repair kit, we have like almost oblong shaped, excessively long steel connections there, and that's meant to disperse the energy. So whatever energy is left after the impact to the front of the column disperses towards the back. And of course, we ensure that the most critical component, the first horizontal, which often takes a lot of beating, we use a C3 channel structural steel to ensure added resistance and additional structural integrity. So how does this all work? Well, very basics from our standpoint. You can repair both the front and back of columns of your upright. The height of a kit, and I think that's fairly common for everybody out there, they usually start around 24 inches and they go up from there. I mean, we've had kits that are, pushing 10, 12, 16 feet up. I forget what the tallest is, but I think 20 feet has been the height that we've repaired in the past. You're asking why in the world would I want to put a 20-foot repair kit? Well, if you're at the end of an aisle and you've got a sprinkler system running through, you're gonna think long and hard before wanting to take that upright apart, purge the sprinkler system, have somebody in to dismantle all that. So there are instances where even very tall repair solutions make economic sense. We use a proprietary lifting and supporting solution to ensure that the safe and adequate repair of an upright. And of course, I said it before and I'll say it again, it comes with a lifetime warranty against impact. The process, for those of you out there that have damage in your facility, so reach out to us either through our website or giving us a phone call. We'll send somebody out free of charge to assess the damage in your facility. We'll tabulate all the information that we collected during our visit, and we'll generate a proposal for you to look after. And once the proposal is approved, we'll send the order to production. And depending on the size of the order, we're looking at 3 to 4 weeks. Certainly, if you have a very, very large order, we're going to stagger the production and shipment over a longer period. And I won't lie to anybody, you know, in this time of COVID and supply chain constraints, you could see that cycle time edge up a little bit, but we're trying to hold really strong to small orders kicking out the door within 3 to 4 weeks, with a very few exceptions. Installation, you know, and this is a very key element about who we are at Damotech. We ensure that the kits that we have installed in your facilities are done by certified installers. This is the way we operate. We don't just delegate this with an installation manual and say, hey, just have at it, good luck. No, we ensure and we actually require that any installation of our product is done by certified crews. Now, for some comparisons as to why, if you're still on the fence at this point as to whether you're interested in rack repair or not, let's do a kind of a compare and contrast. Out of the gate, lead time. So top of the slide there, I talked about 3 to 4 weeks before. Certainly, for smaller orders, larger orders, we're edging a bit more to the right, but nevertheless, compare that to what you're going to have on the replacement side. We're looking at a 4x difference in cycle time. So whatever constraints that you're going to face or we're going to face on the rack repair side as we manufacture our kits, the same constraint is applying to folks that are making their racks. And the last time I've heard of crazy stuff like 18, 20, 24 weeks, if not more, for some racks that are maybe not in stock, but that need to be manufactured. So it's a very real statement, and anybody that's out there that has experience in the market can tell that waiting for a new upright is just a very, very long and painful process. I talked about the lack of disruption, or the minimal disruption that we have on the unload of a position. So we require very minimal unload, in some cases no unload whatsoever, depending on the height of the kit. Now, if you're pushing 30 feet in upright, we may have you unload the topmost portion. But again, compare that minimal unload and disruption to what needs to be done on the replacement of an upright. So if you've got 6 beam levels and you're 30, 35 foot tall upright, that is a long time to remove the pallets, the freight that's loaded up on those uprights, taking the beams down, unscrewing the anchors on the upright. All those things just add up to a ton of time. Now, the installation itself for us, takes under an hour. And if you've got a short repair, like a 24-inch, most of our installers are getting these things in the ground like within 25 to 30 minutes. So compare that to just the reality of putting in a new upright, and it's a stark difference. Under an hour versus several hours, and depending on the expertise of the folks that you're going to use for the replacement of the upright, it could just be a day's worth of work for just a few positions. Now, I don't say that often, but nevertheless, I think we all know there's a reality to the installation procedure of the two technologies. Now, in terms of longevity, if you recall a few slides ago, I talked about that wonderful circle, the damage, you replace, damage, replace. Well, with the rack repair solution, you put that to bed, right? It's a permanent solution. once that repair has been done on the affected portion of the upright, whether it's a front column or front and back, guaranteed for life. So you don't have to worry about that portion of the upright ever getting damaged again with a repair solution. As again, I mentioned before, once you swap in a new upright, you've done the right thing. You've restored safety in that moment in time. It's just a matter of when, not if. It's a matter of when that position will be re-impacted, and you have to kind of go through that whole process once again. Now, price stability. We've seen some ups and downs in the market, mostly ups, unfortunately, lately, as a result of steel pricing increase. But for the most part, and again, just historically, rack repair pricing has held consistently year over year, whereas because the way racking OEMs manage their businesses, you're going to see a lot more volatility in what they do. So we're trying really hard to ensure that we are as stable as we can, but no one's going to lie to you here on our webinar. We are faced every once in a while with a price spike that is difficult for us to manage. But I would tell you, historically, rack repair solutions are much more stable in their pricing than we're going to see with a traditional racking OEM. So from a cost standpoint, you can compare and contrast there what we have. The cost to unload and dismantle on the left-hand side for a rack repair solution, our DamoPro pricing there, then of course the installation of a kit and the overall total of $454. Compare that to what, of course, pricing varies depending on the upright you're going to have. But if you look at whether you're using in-house labor, which we would typically use to unload the position, dismantling that with a third party, the OEM parts. So if you're looking at a 24-foot upright, 30-foot upright, that's in the range of what you might pay depending on what the price of steel is, and of course the installation side. So 30% more on the rack replacement versus the repair. Neither of these take into account mobilization. We kind of stripped out the mobilization from both equations here. So we're kind of comparing as best we can, apples to apples. So if you just remove the disruption aspect of replacing an upright, the sheer cost benefit should cause you to now think about considering rack repair as an interesting solution. Now, I've been talking a lot in this first part of the presentation about column repair, right? So this, I won't say it's the most frequent, but it's the most visible, right? You can tell when you've whacked, the bottom of an upright with your outrigger, the anchors have sheared, the whole thing is twisted. But there's also, as we've kind of spoken about, this concept or a reality called bracing damage. So here's an example of what happens when you damage a brace. So you side shift, you pull out your pallet, and you ding the brace. And there's a solution that we have, proprietary to Damotech, that allows for that component itself to be, the damaged component to be removed from the upright and our solution to be replaced. You don't have to replace the entire upright. You can simply just put our solution in place. Now, how it works. So our solution, the one brace, repairs both diagonal and horizontal braces. Because of the design that we have with the brace itself, it can pivot and be accommodated for both horizontal and diagonal instances. And you can even do it yourself. So you don't have to bring a certified crew in to perform a diagonal brace or a horizontal brace repair. You can do it yourselves, keep some of these in stock, and ensure that within 30 minutes, when we have the instructions to go with it, you can now put that upright back into a safe condition and ensure that your diagonals or your horizontals are back in shape. You don't have to unload your rack. Just make room for the repair itself. The lead time for these, we have them stock, or you could just buy a few, keep a dozen at your facility. And when you have a horizontal brace damage or a diagonal, you could just perform the work yourselves and get back into a safe operating mode. as I mentioned before, you could store it or order some from us and we'll make it happen. So some of the technical aspects of it, we're not going to go into the exact dimensions and sizes because they're adjustable. So whether you've got a 48-foot deep or 48-inch deep upright, or you've got something pushing like a 72 or 84 or something, if you've got a really deep position, we see those as well. But the main components are the supporting bracket. That's the piece that pivots, that allows you to perform a horizontal repair as well as a diagonal. And we're going to have two tubes, a smaller inner tube and a larger outer tube, that permit the two to kind of slide into one another, which allows for that adjustment. And then we just drill in the middle to insert our Chicago bolt. And those supporting brackets are on either end of the brace to ensure that you affix yourself adequately to the upright. Here's an example that we have of a horizontal brace having been installed to replace the damaged horizontal resulting from damage. Cost comparison. Look, I mean, I won't say it's laughable, but it's fairly clear that if you're going to have a damaged brace, which we know from past slides can alter the structural integrity of the upright, it goes without question that the cost of replacing or fixing that one brace is considerably less than having to swap out an upright. But just for those that still have doubts, the numbers are before you. The cost of a brace, in that $60 range, depending on price adjustments that could take effect. Installation itself, look, I mean, it's about $25 depending on who you have done or what the cost of your in-house labor might be. And in terms of lead time, if you don't have it in stock, this is something that we have in stock, so it could ship in under a week. Virtually no unloading in order to perform this repair. And of course, for the typical maintenance person, we're looking under 30 minutes to do all this, and oftentimes even less once you get really good at it. Compare that to swapping out the upright, which I know I don't have to say, but we're talking six-fold in terms of what it might cost you to replace that. So I think what we're trying to get away from this is whether it's a cycle time, the cost itself, the cycle time, which we know is significant for an OEM component, a rack replacement, the need for unloading, which I went through already a few times, and of course the several hours for install. All of those things just add up to a lot of money versus really, quite honestly, is a simple, efficient solution to address your brace damage, which we have on the left there. Now, for those that are looking for just a couple more reasons to consider, brace repair with our solution, I think from an environmental perspective, there's less waste. I mean, you're just removing that one piece of metal brace versus an entire upright. Clear distinction there. With our solution, horizontal and diagonal braces, there's an adaptability element to it. And it's easily stored at your facility. So I think I've really, hammered these kind of points home. So fairly obvious, I think, to the layperson and anybody out there that's been faced with rack damage on the braces themselves. So be proactive in 3 easy steps. Certainly, if you have an interest, reach out to us and order a few, try a few out, see what it feels like. And I think you're going to like the experience. Store some in your facility to ensure that, when you're performing your self-inspections and you identify brace damage, that you have a solution that you can just pop in there within minutes. And of course, that all comes within a hassle-free repair. So I would encourage you all to kind of look at that. And, for those that are still on the fence with rack repair, and apologies for the salesy way I'm doing this here towards the back end, but I think the economics are often what drive the train. So we're trying to come at this in a couple ways today, kind of present just the facts out there about the difference between the two technologies or the two options available to you to address issues, and just the economic, I think, reality of it. And this is an example. It's actually very true. We worked with a 3PL on the freezer side, and we determined that, you know, there's a real financial benefit just to the time of waiting for your solution to arrive. So what is a position that is out of service worth to you? So data from a 3PL that they shared with us, they estimate that the loss of revenue, because in a 3PL freezer, that's all you're doing, right? You have a customer that you're supporting that's paying you for space in a freezer. So the loss of revenue resulting from an out of service bay, right, holding 10 pallets is $600 per week. You've got 10 pallets, you have an out of service bay, that's $600 per week that you are losing in revenue until you fix it. So if you recall from a couple of previous slides, we were at right around 3 weeks for shipment and delivery, and versus 12 weeks for the upright replacement solution. So that's 9-week difference. So fundamentally, the rack repair solution is 9 weeks faster than swapping out a new upright, and virtually instantaneous if you've got in-stock bracing for that damaged brace. So what does that equate to? In this particular instance, you know, because of the 9-week difference that I have, it's simple math. I take my $600 per week times my 9-week accelerated repair, and I'm at $5,400 per bay that now I get back because I chose a repair solution over waiting an additional 9 weeks for a new upright. So, I mean, we're trying to come at this in a way that's intelligent, that allows for folks that rely on revenue from customers like this for it to make sense. So that's how we're trying to approach it. I'm hoping this is kind of causing you all to to rethink the way you're going about things. So to recap very quickly, rack repair means a couple things: short lead time, minimal disruption to your operations because we're not having to unload, or minimally so, cost savings because of the cost of the component and the reduced cost of unloading and reinstalling the component, lifetime warranty against impact, quick installation, and of course, fundamentally a permanent solution. So you're getting out of that wheel of damage, replace. With a rack repair solution like the one Damotech provides, you now have a permanent repair and protection for that upright. Resources available to you. So I would encourage everybody to go to our website. You could download the graphic that I just spoke about. So that kind of shows you the difference between the two. So, you know, if you want to go to the person who's cutting the checks in your facility and get approval for repairs that are needed, we encourage you to use this infographic. Of course, the repair versus upright replacement for the brace itself. I think it's important to walk away from this knowing that brace damage is consequential and that it should be addressed, and we have an easy way to address it. And lastly, if you are wanting to understand more about pallet rack protection and repair, we have a guide that you could download from our website. So, and the web address is right there, damotech.com/resources. So let's get to some of the questions. First question, how do we determine the extent to which a rack beam is damaged that needs its load taken off, subsequently repaired? Is there a mechanical integrity test that needs to be done before we start the repair process? It's a great question, Bob. I would say first and foremost, we have some documentation online that helps you directionally know at what point you have to be concerned about rack damage. But I would say the best thing to do is to reach out to an expert like us, to have an expert go to your location and assess whether the damage that you have on your rack or your beam is beyond the limits of what your upright or beam can take. And we have rules that we use, our engineers use to follow amount of deflection on the beam that's appropriate based on the length of the beam, the amount of deformation on the upright, how tall the damage might be. So the easy answer is just to ensure that you are calling an expert to do that. We have great content you can download to kind of give you an idea of what to really be concerned about. So what is the solution for this without an elongated base plate? So we offer a variety of different solutions for base plates. So depending if you're in a seismic zone, we will have a base plate for our repair solution that accommodates. It'll be wider and it'll be longer than what your traditional base plate will be. So we have a solution for that. And we also have a solution in the event that, I think you saw, our repair kits come with a bullnose. So we put the anchor in the front. There are some instances where there's already an anchor there and it's been sheared, and that position in front of the upright is compromised. And unless you want to dig out the anchor and put epoxy in, what we can do is omit the bullnose and just have a base plate on the back of the front portion of our kit that now can accommodate 2 anchors. So all of our kits have 2 anchors in the front to prevent twisting. If we can't put one in the bullnose, we'll just have a longer base plate to ensure we could put 2 anchors there. So I think that addresses that. Are we going to get a copy of this recorded presentation? I think it will be available for folks to look after. I would look for the note on that on our website. Another question, and this will be the final one before we go. How do I get my installer certified to be an installer? So I would say reach out to us through our website. We're always looking for additional installers to be part of our network of certified installers. So please reach out to us, Zach, and we'll have our people get back with you to see how we can get that particular issue addressed. So I thank everybody. We're at 12:51. I have one more question that just came in. Would a racking system benefit from additional support through use of your approach? I have an old racking system, 30 years, concern is using it for pallets of 8,000 pounds each. Now, I would tell you that traditionally, rack repair is meant to restore the capacity of your position. Now, with certain studies and analysis, could there be a way with a rack repair solution to augment capacity? I've seen it done. I would tell you that 95% of the time, what we want to focus on is restoring the original capacity. And if you have a particular concern, Julian, reach out to us and we can get on a horn with our engineer. But I would tell you, rack repair solutions are meant to restore the original capacity. Adding capacity just requires more analysis, more engineer professionals looking at the situation that you're faced with to see what we can do. So, that was the last question that I had. I thank everybody for attending today's webinar. It was great being able to share some information with you. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. And like I said, many people skipping lunch. Reach out to us again. There's downloadable content on our website. So I thank you very much for the time today. It was great chatting, and y'all have a great day. Take care of yourselves.